want to begin by wishing you all a happy final moments of Hanukkah. If you're listening to this on Friday, and also want to share that I'm going to be leaving town this week to isolate with my family for a number of days, and hopefully seeing my mother the following week. So I am not going to be recording video for a little bit, but I'm reachable in case of emergencies, and hopefully there'll be no emergencies, and you'll all do quite well in my absence. This week was punctuated by seeing images online of members of our community and friends from elsewhere receiving their first COVID vaccines. And these photographs were so inspiring and really induced a very strong emotional response. These were bright lights in the midst of a very dark time, and it seemed very, very appropriate to Hanukkah, where we light flames in a very, very dark time of the year. And hopefully, just as our Hanukkah lights grew and grew over the course of the week, these vaccinations should only increase and grow, and with them will grow health and safety and a return to so much that we really, really miss very, very severely. The vaccine, as I'm sure many of you know, most of you know, is based on a brand new vaccine technology. This is the first deployment of an mRNA-based vaccine. I don't entirely know what that means, but I understand that this is a very, very promising new area of research with the potential to be the basis of vaccines for many, many other diseases. And it could well be that generations from now, people will look back to this week as a real turning point in the history of science, because this was the moment when we deployed our first mRNA vaccine, the first of what might end up being many, many similar vaccines. This vaccine was developed, again, as many of you know, in just a few days. The DNA sequence was shared by a Chinese researcher, and it was a matter of days from receiving that information until the very first vaccine was made, and it was submitted to the FDA to begin its phase 1 safety trial before any Americans had gotten sick from COVID, which is a striking fact. Okay, this entire pandemic in the United States has unfolded while a vaccine already existed. It just had to be tested and it had to be manufactured, but the cure was there even before the disease spread in this country. And that fact weighs on me and pulls me in two directions. On the one hand, what an amazing accomplishment for science. For sure, this will be a scientific achievement that will be studied years to come and generations to come. And on the other hand, what a profound failure of society that we couldn't keep one another safe for long enough for this vaccine that already existed to be tested and manufactured and distributed and then administered. And those two things, those two sides of this moment, this tremendously impressive and inspiring scientific achievement, and this demoralizing social failure that came at the very same time. And both of these things have to be grappled with. As Jews, we should be familiar with having to grapple with these sorts of dichotomies. Many, many times in our past, there have been nations or civilizations or empires that have been at the very pinnacle of science and culture and art and philosophy and literature, and have also treated us and others too with great cruelty and great violence. And so we know that moral advancement doesn't always coincide with scientific advancement or other achievements. I think this is a relevant theme for this week's Torah portion as well. Parshat Miketz begins with the rise of Yosef out of prison to become, the right-hand man of Pharaoh. And the way he does that is by interpreting Pharaoh's dream. Yosef's interpretation is convincing and appealing to Pharaoh, and all of the chachamim, all of the wise advisors of Pharaoh, they're unable to offer an interpretation. Um, Ein poter atam lefro. None of them could explain these dreams to Paro. The Netziv points out that the reason why Paro's chachamim were unable to interpret the dream in a satisfying way is because they couldn't understand what the dream could possibly mean. Famine, like plenty and hunger, famine and bounty. That has no relevance to Pharaoh. He has plenty of food. He always has plenty of food. He never goes hungry. So what relevance could there possibly be to these sorts of dreams to someone like Paro? That threw them off. Yosef understood that Paro cared about his people. And Paro understood that his dream was not a dream about his own personal life, but it was a dream about the nation. And that the basic insight of Yosef that he shares with Paro, it's a very, very simple insight. If you care about your nation, then you'll make sure that they get fed when they're hungry. Right? Yosef doesn't solve the famine problem by genetically modifying the wheat supply, okay, so it can withstand the famine. His advice is very, very, very simple. Save the food when you have it so you can distribute it when there's no food. That's like about as simple as it could be. Yosef's insight is not a technological insight. It's not an agricultural insight. It's not a governmental insight or a political insight. It's a moral insight. Okay, he addresses Paro as a moral being, as someone who cares about his fellow human beings. And if you care about your fellow human beings, then you're going to save the food when you have it to give it away when you don't. That was Yosef's insight. That's how he found favor in Paro's eyes. The Haftarah this week is a very special Haftarah. We only read it very rarely and frequently. Usually Parshat Miketz is superseded. Haftarah is superseded by the Haftarah for Hanukkah, but Hanukkah is over this year before Shabbat, and so we get to read the Haftarah for Miketz the first time in 20 years. So this is a message from 20 years ago until this has been read as a Haftarah. And it's the story of King Solomon and his wisdom. The Haftarah begins, Solomon wakes up as well from a dream, just like Paro. And in his dream, God told him, I will grant you that which you requested from me, which is the wisdom to rule with justice, to listen, to understand your people, and then therefore to be a good king. And God says, because you asked for such a noble thing, I'll grant your wish, and I'll also give you wealth and power as well. So Solomon's success also is realizing that his role as a king, and anyone, like the role of anyone who exercises any sort of powers, any sort of influence, is to be rooted in a concern for other people. I got to listen to them. I got to understand their needs. I have to make wise decisions that benefit them. That's the moral insight of Shlomo, and that makes all of his other successes possible. So I think it's important for us as a shul community to recognize this moment for the world, a moment of scientific achievement and real severe, profound ethical failure at the same time. I think for a shul, this is important for two reasons. On the one hand, part of what a shul can accomplish when people aren't able to come to shul in large numbers is to provide moments of joy and inspiration and encouragement so that we can take care of ourselves and take care of others for however many more months we're still going to need to protect ourselves from this danger. And I think we should just, again, be proud of being part of a shul that's providing these moments of inspiration and encouragement and support in all sorts of ways so that we take care of ourselves and each other for however many more months it'll take, 3, 5, 10, whatever it is. We're going to have to do that. We can't give up on ourselves or on one another. And shul is a mechanism for helping us do that. But also, and maybe more important, shul is a place where we don't care about politics or wealth or status or how nicely you're dressed or how good you look or how fit you are. Okay, whatever other hierarchies may exist in the world, in the confines of our shul, Every human being is a beloved creation in the image of God. Every Jew is a brother or sister who deserves our utmost solidarity and support. And, and that understanding, that basic moral insight of what we owe our Jewish brothers and sisters and our neighbors and fellow citizens and every other human being on this earth who is in danger right now and needs support and solidarity and compassion, needs protection. That basic insight is so, so needed because this moment of scientific triumph will ultimately be a very, very dark stain on human history if we can't match that scientific achievement with moral achievement. And I think that's ultimately is the most important job of any shul, of any religious community. And we have work cut out for us, and I'm honored to tackle that work with all of you in the coming weeks and the coming months. I wish you joyous, happy moments of Hanukkah and a Shabbat Shalom.